Hey guys, it's Howitzer here, back with part 2 of William Gibson's Alien 3 draft that we could have seen. We picked back up from the last video where Bishop and Hicks are learning that the Anchor Point station is already growing alien eggs. The eggs are stunted, but they are still growing. We pick up with the two Wei techs, Wells and Tully, in the egg lab where there is an accident. A tube ends up disconnecting, contaminating the area. Both techs drop and the doors lock shut on their lab. Spence is watching from the outside of the lab, trying to open the doors in order to save the two techs. We then see Tully face down in a pool of fluid, reminding me of Fifield in Prometheus. We then see small gas leaks from the lips of one of the alien eggs, but then Tully and Wells are washed down by other techs and are able to leave the lab. Once the lab is empty, Bishop and Hicks enter the lab to destroy any alien samples before being arrested by security and end up being brought to a meeting with the leaders of the facility, where we find out that even though the samples in the lab were destroyed, that there are samples on the Sulaco on their way to Gateway Station. As they're saying this, Wells then begins to have severe pain, and the next part is just crazy. We aren't about to see an alien chestburster, but instead, we're going to witness an alien transformation. We see biomechanical tendons squirming under the skin of her arms. Her hands claw at one another, tearing flesh from her bones with alien-like talons. She then stops screaming, sits straight up, and then rips her face apart. A new alien sheds its human skin with blood and flesh falling to the floor. One of the agents is attacked and killed by the Wells alien, but the Colonel, Rossetti, escapes and ends up freeing Bishop and Hicks from solitary confinement, but not before they are able to kill the Wells alien. Now it is the job of Hicks to find the other alien, the Tully alien. Hicks ends up confronting the Tully alien in a construction area, and even though Hicks survives the encounter, he is unsure if the Tully alien is still alive or if it died in the fight. Bishop then explains to Hicks that they sought to destroy the entire station in order to stop the alien infection. When Hicks asks, "I thought you were programmed to protect human life," and Bishop states, "I'm taking the long view here." With the aliens now loose on the station, the higher-ups get a message from their enemies, the UPP, who are now facing a similar outbreak situation. They urge the station to quit with their experiments on the alien. It turns out that the UPP have their own genetically altered alien, and it is quoted as being bigger, meaner, and faster, and that they have already infected their entire station. The genetically enhanced alien idea would pop up again later in the series in Alien Resurrection. Hicks, now seeing imminent danger on the station, chooses to pull Ripley out of the med lab and puts her into a cryotube in a lifeboat and ejects her out into space away from the infection, which would set up her return for Alien 4. We now see that Hicks has gathered a group of Marines from the station. They do note, however, that these aren't the experienced Marines that you saw in Aliens, but a group of young Marines with no Xeno experience. Hicks warns the team the aliens don't take any prisoners. If a friend is taken, kill them. The team sets off and ends up finding an enormous mutated alien queen. She is splayed on her back, mortared into a mass of resin. Her abdomen is arched like an inverted scorpion tail, tipped with a swollen semi-translucent sac that ripples and pulses. Soon after the Marines enter the room, aliens begin to pour out of the walls and attack the team. The unprepared Marines are dropping like flies to the alien horde. One of the Marines ends up hitting the Queen with a flamethrower, and she wakes up from her slumber and emits a cloud of smoke just like the eggs in the lab that infected Tully and Wells. Luckily for the Marines, Bishop is watching the fight from a monitor and activates vents in the area to disperse the gas out of the room. Hicks then loads up a mortar shell and blows the Queen's head off. Unfortunately, some of the Marines did get exposed to the gas and are already going through the alien transformation, so Hicks have to put those guys down. There are now only 3 of them after the fight: Hicks, Bishop, and Spence. Back at the UPP, one of the commandos from the initial raid on the Sulaco makes her way through the craft, finding humans already resined into some kind of alien nest on the walls. She eventually makes it to an interceptor craft and takes off, right before a second UPP ship nukes the ship in order to stop the infestation. We are now returned back to the Anchor Point Mall, where we see Walker, the boss of Hicks from the machine shop. He is cornered by an alien and almost ready to be pounced on when, instead of reaching for his gun, he grabs a control unit, bringing to life a power loader that walks right through the glass wall next to them. The alien sees this and attacks the loader, but the loader grabs the alien and holds it still. Walker says, "Fuck you" to the alien, but before he can enjoy this, he starts to change into an alien hybrid himself, obviously being exposed to the alien infection earlier. Now here's the part of this almost made movie that would have been amazing to see. It turns out that there's an eco module on the station that contains monkeys, lemurs, and other animals. Spence enters the area to feed the animals because their feeder has already died. Upon entering the area, she finds that they have also been infected and transformed by the infection into different forms of the alien. I can't imagine seeing what these aliens from the zoo would look like. Hicks then finds her and they go into the operations room on the station. From here, Hicks urges Colonel Rossetti to sabotage the fusion package and destroy the station. Rossetti says they'll have to do it manually due to the damage done to the station's computers. Bishop, just like in Aliens, volunteers for the job. When a Marine enters into the room, drops down to his knees, and screams out in pain as multiple chest bursters burst forth from him, causing everyone in the room to flee. We now go back to Bishop, and he is making his way through the mall shopping area to the fusion package. As he enters the mall, he sees a body face down in a pool at the front of the waterfall. He makes his way past the body and emerges from a doorway and hurries along towards the freight elevator. He freezes as he hears something else, so he goes to investigate, only to find 4 aliens cocooning their prey. We see bodies cocooned to a big screen monitor where silent images of a soccer game repeat endlessly. Bishop then slowly looks up, only to see another queen alien standing completely still. He makes a move for the elevator, and he makes it there, but the queen stabs at him with her tail before the doors fully close. She is now tearing at the door, so Bishop rips up the floor of the elevator and lowers himself down into the shaft. We now go back to Hicks as he's met up with more of the station's survivors as they make their way through the aquaculture and aeroponics farm area. They lose even more survivors here to the aliens, while Bishop succeeds in sabotaging the fusion package. Hicks and the rest of the survivors try to enter the lifeboats, but after opening the door to the area, they are overwhelmed by an indeterminate number of aliens. The group then makes their way into an office where the leader of the station has committed suicide after shredding a heap of documents on the aliens. The team finds an airlock and starts to don suits in order to cross the whole of the station from the outside. Just then, another swarm of chest bursters erupt from another survivor's chest, and the remaining 5 survivors escape out into the airlock. However, Rossetti starts to change into an alien and hurls one of the survivors into space. Hicks then turns and takes out the Rossetti alien. The group makes their way to a shuttle, and they try to find their way into the shuttle from the outside. They are then attacked by more aliens, and Hicks ends up holding them off. Bishop is then rescued from an airlock, while a survivor, Jackson, manages to open a hatch on the shuttle. She then leans into the opening when a queen-size stinger erupts from the back of her neck, slicing her like butter. We then see the Queen's crest rising against the stars, with a solid wave of aliens behind her. Hicks is almost knocked out from an explosion in the battle, so Bishop is left to fend off the alien horde. He blows the Queen's head off with a grenade and then begins taking out the aliens. Hicks, Bishop, and Spence are now making their way to a radio mast jutting from the station's surface with aliens in pursuit, when suddenly a UPP interceptor shows up and blasts away the remaining aliens. The 3 enter the craft with Anchor Point exploding behind them. Bishop tells Hicks that he and Spence are not infected and that the pilot of the Interceptor is actually dying from radiation poisoning. He then tells Hicks that he's going to need to join forces with the Colonial Administration and the UPP in order to combat the aliens on their home turf in a united front, or the aliens will eventually wipe out all of humanity. We then end the film with the space vessel called the Kansas City picking up the Interceptor and taking the survivors off into space. Now, there was a second draft as well by Gibson with some changes and fixes to plot holes after turning in the first draft. There are a lot of differences, but the main one that I'd like to point out first is that in the first draft we saw lots of Marines and Queen aliens. In the second draft, no Marines, no Queen aliens. The second draft focuses mainly on just 3 alien creatures. We get the one alien that's destroyed when Rodina is nuked. Then we get another alien that is a transformed human hybrid at Anchor Point. But then we get the third alien, which is known to as the Beast, and that is a more classic Giger type alien. As far as other main differences, there are a couple that I'd like to note that really do set the films apart besides the number of aliens. In that first draft, that same guy, after having the attack on the facehugger, they eject him and the facehugger out into space. In the second draft, his corpse is left aboard the Sulaco, and then that way we can get the alien from his chest later in the film. Another plot hole that they ended up fixing in the second draft was to remove the 2 aliens that attacked the team in the beginning of the first draft. We never had a reason as to where these aliens would have come from, so in the second draft they do away with those 2. In the first draft, when Bishop destroys the alien samples, he hesitates before he does it, but it's not explained. In the second draft, he actually explains that he feels a moment of conflict because it's against his nature to destroy anything living. We also have Tully transforming into an alien hybrid and attacking Hicks and company, but in the second draft, he ends up locking himself into a freezer to commit suicide, and Spence ends up finding his frozen, half-transformed body. Another cool item that we get from the second draft is we actually find out more about what the Colonial Marines bug hunt means. Spence shed some light on this by saying that the Colonial Marines eradicate redundant species on colony planets to make the area safe and habitable, with no competing ecosystem for the colonists. Another awesome feature for Gibson's second draft of the Alien 3 script was that they were going to return to the nest that we saw in the deleted scene in Alien. One last change from the second script that I would have loved to have seen was that they were going to call the alien that looked like the Giger more traditional alien the Beast. And we were going to get a scene where the Beast actually fights and kills a hybrid alien by tearing it in 2. So what do you guys think about these ideas for a script for Alien 3? Personally, reading the story, I actually like this much better than what we got from Alien 3, but it's hard to tell how this would transfer to film. I would also note that this is only the second and first writing of the script, and this script is not really ready for film, as it would have probably had more changes and more alterations before it actually got closer to a final script. An interesting part to me that I did mention earlier is the stuff that we see later in other Alien films, especially when you get to the virus that is just way too close to the black goo from Prometheus and Covenant, which I just think is an amazing idea. And then we also have the ideas of the animal creatures being infected by the alien, which ended up showing up in the actual Alien 3 movie that we got. Do you guys like the changes that were introduced in the second draft of the script, or do you like the original version where we had 2 alien queens and much more aliens running around? I myself like the first version, but I also do like how they cleaned up certain plot holes with that second version. Now, I'd also like to note this is not the only one of the Alien 3 drafts and scripts that didn't make it to film. There were a bunch more, like I said at the beginning of the video, but this one was the most solid and the most completed drafts that actually were made. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this script down below in the comments. If you liked the video, if you could leave a like, it helps out the channel so much. And if you haven't subscribed yet, why not do so for all the future Aliens content? Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.